My wife took a 2-week vacation, and that made me a stand-up comedian. Um, let's get back to 2024, April, May 2024. And things were not going well between my wife and I at home. What was happening is that we had recently relocated from Mumbai to Bangalore. And as part of that move, my wife had taken up a job as a research assistant, research fellow in Bangalore, which was a step down from her job as an assistant professor in econometrics in Mumbai. Econometrics is the data of economics. I myself was struggling with my startup. It wasn't going the way I was wanting it to go. And in the middle of all this, I was starting to have self-doubt about what I was working on. So in the middle of all this churn, oh, one more thing. In the middle of all this churn, we lost a lot of money to cyber criminals. And when all this was happening, my wife decided to take a 2-week break with our son to go visit her parents. The first week for us was uneventful. I did all the usual things. I woke up in the morning, did business development for my startup. Afternoons were spent coding and bug fixes. And evenings and nights, I spent worrying about the future. When all this was happening, I was thinking to myself, why am I dealing with this right now? I got my master's in computer science from New York University. My first job after finishing my master's was at Goldman Sachs. Oh, am I going? Wait. On Wall Street. This was not the future I had envisioned for myself. And then I started having second thoughts about my startup. Was this a problem I really wanted to solve? Could I see myself doing this for the next 5 to 7 years? And when those thoughts start coming in your head, the smart thing to do is to take a vacation, a staycation. So for the second week of my 2-week break from family life, I looked for things to do over the coming weekend. And I noticed that there were a few open mics that I could attend. In for a penny, in for a pound. So I decided not only would I attend the open mics as an audience, I would participate as a performer. I would write poetry, which basically meant for the remainder of the second week, I was writing lines which rhymed with each other. Then on Saturday, I was at the open mic delivering my poems, and I was feeling a little bit like Eminem, the rapper. Not Eminem, the successful rapper who's won Grammy Awards. I felt like Eminem in the song Lose Yourself. My arms were heavy, my palms were sweaty, mom spaghetti. I was forgetting my lines. And when I walked off stage, nobody clapped for me. Nobody snapped their fingers. Nobody said, wah, wah. But in those 5 minutes, I felt more alive than I had felt in a long, long, long time. I was bitten by the performing arts bug. But clearly, poetry was not something that I was good at. So I'd switch to something simpler, I thought. Stand-up comedy. How hard can that be, right? Very, 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 very hard. My first open mic for stand-up had a set of jokes on Taylor Swift's armpits. And like armpits anywhere in the world, those jokes stank. That set bombed, as did the next one, and the one after that. And this kept happening until I realized that maybe I needed to understand humor a little bit better. We're all in the engineering campus, so I want to take a digression. Do you guys also think about what I used to think of when I was doing my engineering? What's the point of learning all this that we're studying on campus? When am I going to use this in my future career? The answer to that is, you will use it 20 years from today to solve a midlife crisis, like I did. But anyway, engineering has a lot of features going for it. It teaches you how to look at a problem from the ground up, from first principles. It teaches you to break down a big problem into smaller and smaller problems that you can solve, and then build big solutions on top of the smaller successes, which is what I did with humor. Since you guys seem to be a smart, thinking audience of engineers, you're probably wondering to yourself a few questions, and let's acknowledge them for a minute. Can anyone actually be taught humor? Do you have to be innately funny to be a comedian? And why are we discussing humor today? And finally, what exactly is humor? The answer to the first question of whether humor can be taught is yes. The answer to the second question of whether you need to be innately funny to be humorous is no. Now comes the why. Why are we discussing humor today? Ladies and gentlemen, we live in the world of artificiality. The headlines now are Age of AI has begun. Humor makes you human. It lets you build that connection with your fellow humans in a way that's unique to you, that no large language model, no agentic AI can do for you. So today, I believe we need humanness and humor way more than we need artificiality. And that's why we're discussing humor today. And not just that, humor lets you combine ideas which were not until you thought of it, able to combine with each other. In a way, if you ask me, humor is a bit like yoga for the brain. Now, let's get to what is humor. Humor is the juxtaposition of two ideas next to each other with a bridge between them. This sounds like a lot of words. Let me explain it with an example. Remember I told you my wife likes to work with data? So soon after our marriage, my wife said to me, you know, your hair follows a normal distribution. There's nothing here, there's nothing there, and it peaks in the middle. I want you guys to stop thinking about the distribution of my hair and look at it in the light of this definition. What are the two ideas we're placing next to each other? The distribution of hair on my body and something that any data scientist can tell you today, a normal distribution. We're connecting the idea in statistics with biology. And the bridge between them was this gesture. For the people who did not know what normal distribution looks like, this gesture was the key to understanding the joke. But if you ask other people, they have different definitions of humor. Some will say it's a setup and a punchline. Some might say it's dark humor, sarcasm, puns, wordplays, blonde jokes, knock-knock jokes, bar jokes. But the actual definition is a lot simpler, and that's up on screen for you. But like I said to you, I spent the last year trying to understand humor from the ground up. And the good news for you today is that I have a set of triggers, a set of laughter triggers that you can take outside the hall today and start using in your life. And luckily for us, those laughter triggers follow a nice pattern. We call them the sierras of humor, the peaks of comedy. Let's start with the first one. Surprise. When I was growing up, my dad taught me a lot about being a man. He taught me how to be a better father, a better husband, and he told me to expect that eventually my role in the family will be to be the designated driver. What did I do here? I sent you on a journey. I sent you on a journey expecting big ideas, parenting, fatherhood, being a man, being a husband. And in the middle of all this, I changed directions. Designated driver. You were here, and I dragged you back there. That element of surprise is what triggered laughter in some of you. Incongruity. Another example. We all keep hearing that you should not judge a book by its cover. But have you wondered if books can judge each other by the cover? On our bookshelf, we have a book called Sapiens, which deals with the history of humanity. for the past 100,000 years. Next to it is a book that my wife gave to me on our anniversary, Cooking for Dummies. I can imagine that book Sapiens looking at the book called Cooking for Dummies and thinking that I am a dummy. That is incongruity in action. We are giving human emotions to something that's not normally associated with human thought, like a book in this case. And if you believe that this is a novelty, that incongruity is not really something humans use, let me remind you of Aesop's fables. That entire set of fables depends on incongruity. Human emotions attached to non-human characters like animals. Moving on. The third laughter trigger, something that each one of you have in your hearts right now, which you can take out and make your friends laugh about. But before that, a story. The host said that I was living in the States for many years, nearly 15 years. And the biggest culture shock when I moved to the States and lived there for so long was not the big roads, fancy cars, nice buildings. My biggest culture shock was that Americans really like to talk in toilets. So soon after I started my job, I was sitting on the pod at work. And one more thing about toilets, American toilets, that the door of the toilet doesn't reach all the way to the floor. There's usually a couple of feet gap from the floor. So what would have happened is, and my boss walked into the toilet. So what probably happens is that he noticed my shoes from under the toilet door, and he started talking to me. He started asking questions about a project I was working on. I don't know about you, but I've been taught to keep my mouth quiet in toilets. So I refused to answer him. This didn't sit well with him. He's the boss after all. So he came to my stall, knocked on the door, asked the question again. When I still didn't answer him, he leaned to that little gap between the stall door and the stall, made eye contact with me, and he went, as if asking why I wasn't answering him. Some of you had your hand on your mouth because you were embarrassed for me. But some of you were also laughing. Ladies and gentlemen, that is embarrassment. Your audience feels empathy for you when you have the courage to share your embarrassing stories. Not just that, not only do they see themselves in your story, because you too were in the toilet with me. Not only do you imagine the empathy or the moment with me, it creates a safe space for your friends, your audiences, to share their embarrassing stories with you. And that is what makes this a human story, embarrassing stories. Recognition. I come from a small town, Bihar. Until recently, Biharis were on screen for two things, either as villains or as buffoons. But the fact of the matter is, when you tell the story of someone in a true way, that itself, just the fact that you're presenting on screen, on stage, in front of the audience, a recognizable character, makes that a laughter trigger. Your audience supplies its own backstory. The audience which recognizes this character that you're presenting on stage, they recognize the backstory and they appreciate you for showing them that backstory. Release. We've all been dealing with crazy events, Operation Sindoor, the political strife in the US. But release lets you find humor in that as well. An example. A couple of decades ago, Pope John Paul II had died. And a comedian went on stage right after that to perform. And a lot of people were really sad about the Pope's passing. And there were vigils being held all over the world, prayer meetings to ask that the Pope be sent to heaven. And the comedian said this on stage. You know, I don't know about you, but if we need to pray for the Pope to go to heaven, we have no chance. So what was significant was that though this was a significant and a heartfelt moment for a lot of people, that comedian with that joke offered release. And that made release a laughter trigger for that audience. ambiguity. Now, my wife and I have a 4-year-old, like you can see. And when we were expecting our son, it turned out that our neighbor Mary was also expecting a baby. And so we sort of helped each other through the pregnancy. And towards the end, we had a baby boy, healthy, everything was great. We loved it, we enjoyed it, we were proud of ourselves for having a healthy child. But on Mary's side of the family, in her apartment, in her life, there was a lot of strife. People were questioning the paternity of the baby. People were asking how this happened. A lot of strife. And the entire apartment community was involved in that conversation. Do you know why? Because Mary had a little lamb, and even her doctor was surprised. What did I do there? I told you a story which did not have a good resolution. The entire audience was quiet, wondering where the story was going to go. What was the resolution that would make the story make sense? And ambiguity is that laughter trigger. If you can keep your audience on edge for a prolonged amount of time, they will reward you with laughter. Superiority. Time for another example. When we were growing up, we used to call ourselves middle class. But the truth is, we were middle class for exactly 1 month every year. The month our dad got his yearly bonus. For the rest of the year, we were lower middle class. So one day what happened, a rich uncle of ours came to visit us, and he took us out for dinner. And at that restaurant, it was a fancy restaurant, at that restaurant, at the end of the dinner, they put a bowl in front of me with water and a few pieces of lemon. I had never been to a fancy restaurant. I thought that bowl was for drinking. And I drank from it until my uncle gave me that deathly glare. And then I knew that I'd made a mistake. So all the people who laughed in this audience, you were feeling superior to me. You were thinking to yourself, how is it that this guy who looks the way he does, studying in NYU, working on Wall Street, has no idea what a finger bowl is supposed to be used for? And that's okay. It's okay to feel superior to me, because I shared that story with you to elicit that response from you. So superiority, where the audience feels better than you, is a great laughter trigger. And again, it's not a negative. If you think about all the Bollywood movies you've seen, there is always a buffoon character, the character you're all supposed to laugh at. You're supposed to feel superior to that person. You can use that to make jokes too. Finally, configurational. You guys are all engineers, so let's see if this joke, how well this joke lands. There are 10 types of people in the world: people who know binary and people who don't. I can guarantee you that the people who laughed were all the CS kids. Because in binary, which is a CS computer science thing, the number 2 is represented by the number 10. This is configurational humor to you, something that a small subset of the audience would recognize and understand. And it's not as rare as you think, because there are audiences of teachers, lawyers, doctors, accountants waiting for their stories and their jokes to be told, their inside information to be shared on stage. So ladies and gentlemen, that is configurational humor to you. And you're all engineers. The mechanical people will have their own inside jokes. The computer science people will have their own inside jokes. You all can enjoy some configurational humor. With that, I want to wind up this talk and give you that insight that humor is not as far away from you as you think. It's within reach and arm's distance from you. All you need to do is to figure out how to place ideas next to each other and how to build the bridge between them. And believe me, you need that more than you think. Because in this world of artificiality, the only thing you have, the only thing nobody else can take from you, is your humanity. And the key to humanity is humor. Thank you.